might think I should take in information, I should form a single coherent attitude. I am pro-housing, I want more housing. And then when I'm casting a vote or evaluating public officials' actions, I'll take my one coherent attitude into account. But we
And the chat says, personality is paramount to most voting. No, the primary thing that accounts for how people vote is their identity, right? Men are more likely to vote conservative than women. White people are more likely to vote for the Law and Order Party than black people, right? So whether you're black or Latino, lower class Latino or upper class Latino, right? Where you are in the social hierarchy, what your identity is, what your peers are saying and doing and believing, all right? You want to fit in with your people and this identity. So if you're a college professor, in all likelihood, you will vote left. If you're a doctor or a lawyer, a member of the professions, in all likelihood, you will vote left. If you're working class, if you're working 40 hours a week, right, and you're not getting subsidized by government welfare, all right, and you're earning less than $100,000 a year, in all likelihood, you will vote right wing.
We have a lot of evidence that people's attitudes on matters of public policy look a lot more like this. It's not one single coherent attitude, but a bunch of different considerations, different notions about this issue, some of which might make me feel more pro-housing and some of which might make me feel more anti. And then when I go to cast a ballot, when I go to answer a question on a poll, when I have a conversation about this.
I mean, do you think that people are going to shift away from the point of view of their peers simply because they like a personality of a politician? That happens occasionally, but not dominantly. Dominantly, we match the political preferences of those people who are most important to us, those people who we most want to fit in with. So if you're an Orthodox Jew, in all likelihood, in most parts of the country, you're going to vote for Donald Trump because this is what other Orthodox Jews are doing. If you're evangelical Christian, you're going to vote for Donald Trump because this is what other evangelical Christians are doing. I'm
probably not going to remember all 20 or 50 or 100 of the things that I think about housing at once. I'll just pick one, whichever one comes to my mind, or maybe a couple. And if that one that I pick happens to be something that's anti-housing, maybe I drove by a new apartment building in my neighborhood, I don't like how it looks, I'm worried about my neighborhood changing, then even if I have 35 other pro-housing considerations in my mind.
So people vote largely on the basis of feeling. Now, if you force them to articulate a reason, they'll try to make it sound rational. But people either feel happy with the direction of their group, their country, their nation, or they feel unhappy. If they're unhappy, right, they are much more open to a new direction and to voting for the challenger rather than the incumbent. But we develop our hero systems from our community, and we tend to develop our voting patterns from our community, from the people who are most important to us.
The one that happens to be at the top of my thoughts that day is going to be influential over my voting and my opinions that I express. So this kind of model helps explain some really common patterns that we see in public opinion. One of these is that if you ask someone how they feel about an issue today, and then you ask them again a year from now, they'll often give you a completely unrelated response both times. People's attitudes change very readily. And that's consistent with the model in which people are kind of taking
for example, didn't polls show a majority of women voting for Bill Clinton because of sex appeal? No. I think women voted for Bill Clinton because he represented the coalition of the fringe, as against the dominant white male patriarchy that tended to vote for Republicans, right? Women wanted to maintain their right to abortion. Women prefer a more nurturing style of government than do men, and they prefer government that subsidizes people, engages in more social welfare spending. And the Democratic Party better represented that point of view.
Whatever ideas are top of their mind that day, rather than having a single coherent thought. Another thing that's probably related to this is the idea that question wording matters a lot in polling. So there's been a lot of talk in the news about abortion in the last year or two. You've probably noticed that polls on this can have really, really different results. And part of the reason we think for this is that different question wordings can bring different ideas to the top of people's minds. Even if no one's getting any new information or changing their mind in a meaningful way, they can bring different bubbles to the top of what people are thinking about when they're giving you an answer. So both of these patterns, along with other evidence, suggest that people's attitudes look a lot more like this, and therefore it's kind of hard to think about them having a single attitude shaping their vote choice and their approval of elected officials. So you might think maybe people don't have strong attitudes on any individual issue, but maybe they have broader ideas, broader ideologies or principles that are shaping how they engage with politics. And that also turns out generally not to be the case. If you ask people, to talk to you about what being liberal or being conservative means in politics, They'll often be able to tell you, what it means to dress conservatively or something like that, but not whether estate tax reform is a conservative or a liberal policy. And I think this makes sense. Even if you know some broader conservative or liberal principles, for example, if I think conservative means limited government, it takes a lot of steps and a lot of information to get from that general notion to a particular assessment of whether this estate tax reform proposal is conservative or is liberal.